Hey guys, how's it going? Let's get started with today's topic, revealing the character through setting. All right, so first of all, let's talk about what setting is and how to create an effective setting. Setting on its own is the time and geographical location of a narrative. Sounds pretty simple, but it's creating an effective setting that's a little bit trickier. So what's separating a good setting from a bad one? A good setting is one that plays an active role in the narrative. It sets the mood or it influences the plot, and it directly affects the characters. A bad setting is, well, it's the opposite. It has little to no role in the narrative whatsoever. It doesn't interact directly with the characters, there doesn't seem to be a passage of time, and everything kind of feels like it's behind a green screen, just static, and there's no life to it. Does it make sense? Good. Now that we've discussed what setting is and what separates a good one from a bad one, let's talk about how to use setting as a tool for providing character detail to the reader. Now, this is the part where I mention everyone's favorite saying, I'm sure, show, don't tell. I'm sure that we've got this phrase drilled into our heads for years now, but just in case you somehow missed the memo, showing and not telling is a writing technique where you detail the character through means other than exposition. So like through setting or through character actions, sensory details, etc., etc. And it just so happens that setting is a fantastic tool to use for show don't tell. When used correctly, setting can tell a whole lot about a character to the reader. Now you can do this in a few different ways. You can do this in the straightforward way, where you choose a location that tells lots about the character just by being what it is. For instance, if you want your reader to know that your character is dealing with trauma or working through some things, you can have the setting be in a therapist's office. You see what I mean? It's just the location that's doing the work for you. There's no interaction between character and setting. That's one way to go about it. Another way, and probably the more effective way, is to show the character interacting directly with the setting. This is a good way to liven up the setting, keep it from feeling stagnant. For example, if you want to show that your character is grieving a loved one, having the character tear up at the sight of a picture frame of someone on their dresser is so much more effective than just telling the reader this through exposition. Alright, so we've defined what setting is, we've talked about how to create an effective setting, and now we've just gone over why setting is such a valuable tool to describe a character. Okay, now let's actually talk about how setting reveals character. A good place to start is to use sensory details in your setting. The most effective settings are ones that are seen through the lens of the character. That's the main thing that separates boring settings from impactful ones. Descriptions of setting that are in an objective view lack any depth. They're just simple listings of location. But descriptions of settings that are warped by the perspectives of the character, now we're cooking. Now it's interesting. Now it's nuanced. It's different. No two characters see something the same way. That's what keeps these things refreshing. That's what keeps the same setting used in generations of novels different, because it's looked at a different lens through every character. Now take that concept and multiply it by a billion. Then you delve deeper into sensory detail. Sensory details provide more than just surface level description, and it offers more to the reader than just what the character sees. If you include textures, sense of smell, touch, sound, and taste, it brings the settings and turns your description of the character to a whole different dimension. In bonus, it's sensory details that actually do a great job in establishing certain moods in your narrative, like the overall tone. A lot of that has to do with sensory details. It's another little bonus tip. Okay, I know that was a lot of information to digest. Is everyone doing good so far? Okay, cool. Now let's move on to probably the biggest way to reveal character through setting, and that's through detailed descriptions. I know, This one sounds like a no-brainer, but there are so many ways to mess this up. When I say detail, I don't mean paragraphs upon paragraphs upon paragraphs of specific description. When I say detail, I mean detail that directly affects the character. Now, this leads to a difference between accuracy and necessity. What does this mean? It all revolves around having too much detail in your setting. So, in an attempt to save your story from feeling like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 4-page description of mountains and all, I'm going to go over what details to include and which to omit in your setting. For starters, do not include a bunch of detail for the sake of being accurate. If you focus on being overly accurate, you'll have pages upon pages of setting description in an attempt to create this picture-perfect image in the reader's head. Instead, focus only on keeping details that influence the characters or narrative in some way. Details that tell the reader about the character, establish core themes in a story, or affect the tone. It's not important for the reader to know that the wooden chair was carved by a certain manufacturer or made in a specific year. It is important for the reader to know that the wooden chair was a gift from the character's father. Look, direct interaction. No one needs to know the specific build or the specific furniture or details that have no need for being there. You're kind of wasting words at that point. Everything needs to be meticulous and impact the story in a certain way. All right. Now we've covered definitions and hows and whys and the goods and the bads. Let's see how all of this is utilized in a story. We're going to be looking at 2 examples of really effective setting that reveal details about the characters and analyze and dissect, and we're going to do all that good stuff. The first example is going to be from Carolyn Frochet's The Colonel. I was in his house. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. His daughter filed her nails. His son went out for the night. There were daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. The moon swung bare on its black cord over the house. Broken bottles were embedded in the walls around the house. On the windows, there were gratings like those in liquor stores. That the character that's being revealed by the setting, in this passage at least, isn't the I. It's the Colonel himself. In this case, the setting is revealing to the reader that this Colonel is a threat to the speaker. The first hint that we get is in the location itself, like we talked about earlier. I was in his house. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. His daughter filed her nails. His son went out for the night. This is an area in which the speaker has no control. Next comes in those details that we talked about earlier. Daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. This is a great example of necessity versus accuracy. It isn't necessary to describe specifics about the daily paper, or the breed of the dogs, or even the make of the pistol. The model of the pistol is of no use to us right now. All the speaker needs to know is that there's a gun on the cushion, and we're in an environment that we're not supposed to be in. Once again, no control. What demands the reader's attention is what is revealed through the setting about the Colonel. He's hostile. This is a dangerous situation. And that last bit there is to solidify to the reader that this is a hostile environment. We had the somewhat normal start. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. Nothing weird about that. Daughter filed his nails. Nothing weird about that. There was papers. There was pet dogs. But then the pistol comes into play. Now that the pistol is here, we finish with broken bottles were embedded in the walls around the house. On the windows, there were gratings like those in liquor stores. There's a gradual shift in tone there. that last section does. I love this excerpt so much because it so clearly has everything we've ever talked about in the lesson in it. Location is used, accuracy versus necessity is used, detail. There's even a mood shift at the last little portion of that text. And it's a great example of everything being utilized in unison, in synchronization, all at once. And now, with that, we move on to our next example. This next excerpt is from Lorelei Lee's Viewfinder. Lee does a fantastic job with how specific the detail gets here. In Spiegler's apartment, there are 2 or 5 or 3 or 6 of us. We play dead, drape our work membranes across the couch. At the end of the day, we curl over our computer screens, our shoulders turned in, too tired to close our mouths. We excrete lip gloss in high gloss magazines. We excrete Coke bottles and enema bottles and instant diet pudding cups. Cuban heeled stockings, garter belts, charm bracelets, potato chip bags, microwave oatmeal, belly button studs, lavender scented air freshener, nail polish, fortune cookie fortunes, an AVN trophy, an 8x10, a deli menu, a viewfinder, 1 crushed Marlboro. That's a lot. And it seems almost at first glance it's too much. But let's take it one chunk at a time. We excrete Coke bottles and enema bottles and instant diet pudding cups. This line immediately lets the reader know how these girls live. Though it is hinted at the beginning that these women are sex workers, with multiple women being in one man's apartment, this short description that comes after solidifies it. The instant diet pudding cups also allude to the girls having to worry about their image, as one would in this kind of industry. Cuban heeled stockings, garter belts, charm bracelets, and potato chip bags. The reader here begins to conjure up an image of these girls now. Also note the somewhat randomness of this list. The order in which the items are described gives the reader the feeling that these women don't work in the cleanest environment. There's mess, there's junk food, there's clothes, random bottles everywhere, it's cluttered. This detailed listing of setting continues a bit longer. Microwave oatmeal, belly button studs, lavender scented air freshener. We get a bit more about the characters here. Microwave oatmeal, along with the other foods listed before, are all either junk food, quickly prepared food, or snacks, which tells the reader that these girls don't get a home-cooked meal often. Lavender air freshener, that's where the sensory details come in. We see everything taken to a new dimension with this line here. Because it's not just the lavender air freshener now. Now the reader's thinking, well, what scent are they trying to cover up? With how everything else described, it can't be good. And with the previous randomness and the clutter, it doesn't suggest that they just have this there. There's a reason for it being there. These details continue further. And now we get to the finale. Nail polish, fortune cookie fortunes, an AVN trophy, an 8x10, a deli menu, a viewfinder, 1 crushed Marlboro. Here we get probably the most concrete descriptions. Fortune cookie fortunes and a deli menu reveals that these girls don't exactly eat gourmet meals. That's for sure now. The AVN trophy, which is an adult movie trophy, confirms for sure now that they're sex workers. And the crushed Marlboro is another example of their somewhat poor living conditions. I love this excerpt. This excerpt is brilliant because on the surface it might look like this is too much. We had one sentence in the beginning kind of setting the scene, and then we have description till the very end. But the way that this detail was structured, Lee slowly builds these girls up from nothing but pure setting. Rather than fully describing them all at once, there's a very meticulous unraveling of character that we can see here. And it's done by way of a huge list like block of detailed description. And the subtle uses of sensory description add that final touch. And by the end, the reader has grasped these girls and has a perfect image of them. And they don't talk. There's no dialogue. There's really no description of the girls in particular. It's all setting, and through nothing but a list, we can get these girls are ingrained into our minds. We know how they live, we know their conditions, we know what they do. I love how Lee takes one core aspect of revealing character through setting and rolls with it at 1,000 miles per hour. All right, and there we have it, guys. That's it. We did it. That was revealing character through setting. And remember, setting plays a huge role in revealing your characters to the reader, and a huge role in fiction in general. A weak setting, a stagnant one, a still image in the background that doesn't influence the plot or reveal character can honestly be the catalyst to ruin your story. And more specific of what we talked about today, it plays a huge part in having three-dimensional and impactful characters. Imagine if that amazing setting in Forche's piece was replaced with the Colonel just oozing exposition of how big and scary he was. All of that beautiful tension that was created in that piece would be gone. And I don't even want to imagine Lee's piece without her masterful use of setting. If Lee's piece had a boring setting that was devoid of life or lacked specific detail that brought out and revealed the characters, I mean, for one, it would literally be 4 sentences long, and two, we would have absolutely no clue about the characters. All right, it was a pleasure, guys, and until next time. And remember to show, not tell. See ya.